She's in some anime, may. Her name's Stephanie Sheh. So I just gotta make a new Kirblog. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Voice October 2016, where I'm interviewing various voice acting veterans from the US and Canada to learn about the history of how they started and where they started. Today, I don't know if this is going to be the first episode. I don't know if it's going to be the last episode because I'm recording all these out of order and I don't know what's going to happen. But today, we're going to talk about where I am currently at and have been the last 2 years. California, particularly Los Angeles. My guest, if you couldn't already guess from my flat out saying her name in the intro that I did, you would probably know her best in the VO world for her roles such as Orihime from Bleach, Hinata from Naruto, Julie from Legend of Korra, a ridiculous amount of shows that I couldn't possibly list all of. But in addition, she's also the voice director for many of the recent Gundam animations, such as the Origin OVAs, as well as Gundam Thunderbolt and other such things, and is producer on Fooly Cooly back in the day, and has done everything ever in existence you could possibly imagine in the anime world. My God. I'm joined by Stephanie Sheh. Hi, thanks for coming on.
Hey, how's it going? That was a nice intro.
I had some time to prepare this time, so it wasn't hopefully awful. But so, Stephanie, I'm going to start with the most generic question you've probably answered at every goddamn convention you've ever been to first.
Oh, voice actor?
What's that?
Voice actor?
Oh, no, actually, no, because I don't want to know how, because that sounds like a very sad career to choose. No. How did you? I am curious myself because I don't know this, and I want to know. Can you show me? How did you get started in this crazy, wacky ass world of cartoons?
Well, I had always wanted to be an actor, and I liked anime actually. And so I was going to UCLA, and I was writing for the Daily Bruin, which is the newspaper there, and my editor was like, "This anime thing is like really popular, so I think we have an anime club. Why don't you like go do an article on them?" And so I walked up and down. Well, first I went to like the student union to look up the officers of who was in the club, but it turns out it was all like last year's officers. So I didn't know what to do, and then I was walking on Bruin, and there was a big sandwich board sign that said "Anime Club meeting tonight," and I had a midterm the next day, and it was like "Anime Club meeting tonight, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m." And well, I had this deadline, so I felt like, oh yeah, I need to go to this meeting so I can write an article. But I thought, holy crap, what can people do for 3 hours in an anime? It just seems such a time, right? So I go to this meeting, and the guy comes up, the president comes and goes, he's like, today we will be watching Evangelion, Escaflowne, Slayers, and Marmalade Boy.
I am incredibly enthused about all of these programs we are about to share together.
And then he goes, oh yeah, and if you, we have somebody from the Daily Bruin, if you want to be interviewed, go see her. So I was like, oh, and then the lights dimmed, and then, by now people should have heard of these shows before and know that they are quite impressive, good shows. You know what I mean? But at the time, I didn't know what Eva was. I didn't know what Escaflowne was. And so, yeah, so I was like, okay. And I sat down, and the lights dimmed, and I watched it, and I was just like pretty much hooked from there on out, because I was like, whoa. And first episode of Eva ends in a cliffhanger. Second episode of Escaflowne ends in a cliffhanger. Like everything we watch ends in a cliffhanger, and I was pretty much like, oh shit, I have to come back.
So by that point, it's like, oh god, I need to fix. Where can I find more? Which, I mean, I don't know, was
Yeah,
this like 80s or 90s where it was like a little more difficult to find the stuff easily?
I think it was not the 80s, not that old, but it was the end of the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, people were still, there was like VHS tapes. People were still loaning each other VHS tapes. Let's just say that.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so that was going on, and so that's how I got my interest in anime. And then, I already wanted to be an actor, so there was that. And then, after, as I pursued acting, I pursued all acting, including anime voice acting. Even though at the time I was strictly a subtitled girl, I did not like to listen to or watch dubs.
Hmm.
But then I was like, well, I could try to be in dubs. They don't seem to be that hard.
And now you're a part of the problem. Congratulations.
I know. The dubs have changed a lot.
Yeah.
Like the guys that I used to work with, he would tell me how back in the day, they didn't have digital recording. It was all analog. So you were recording over a tape. So that meant that anytime you recorded a line in the timeline, if you wanted to do another take, you would record over it.
Hmm.
So the director really had to think, is this the best take? Or if it's not, I lose the previous take, So, I mean, I can kind of see why stuff wasn't as good, because it was much harder to do. And there was no beeps or anything. Everything was based on a stopwatch and time code.
Hmm.
So it's super, super different.
And this was the time of like Michael McConaughey and Doug Stone and Barbara Gridley, like the first generation folks.
Yeah, this is like the first. It's like Robotech time. Like
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, because I was going to say that the next question after that was like, because you started kind of right after the big explosion of like Pokemon and DBZ and Yu-Gi-Oh all kind of hit, and then like, whoa, anime is a thing that's like presence now a lot.
I started a little after that because I was still in college when that kind of stuff was
Okay.
going on. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like the early days of like before, because I mean, you've also worked with like all of the first gen guys.
Well, they're still working,
Of course, yeah. No, I mean, because if they're all in everything still, even on Cartoon Network right now, and all the stuff I've heard you and Michael work on at MYEV. And
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like from working with them and learning a lot, like were those early days of like prior to like you and like and Michael and a lot of you guys getting started, like was it just completely different from the way it was now? Like how much has it changed, or even since you started in the early 2000s?
I think the thing that was really different is that most of the actors, it was very rare. The fact that I knew what anime was and was a fan of it,
Mm-hmm.
that was much rarer because anime was not that popular and dubs were not that popular.
Mm-hmm.
So people got into doing this type of work because they were an actor and because they wanted to act.
Mm-hmm.
They did not get into the work because it was, any sort of fame or any sort of popularity. In fact, I spent there were a good many of years when I would go to a convention and people would mock us for being the English version,
Mm-hmm.
and only anybody ever wanted to, people only wanted to, go to the panels with the Japanese creators, the original creators,
Mm-hmm.
The panels with the dub actors were very, very small and not very well attended. They were not very popular. Online back there wasn't as much of an online presence as now, but like back in those days, there was a lot of comments were all negative and
Mean.
yeah, exactly, bashing and mean and stuff like that. So, it's especially like back then, it was much harder to get online. So you didn't have as many. You have like the super more tech savvy nerdy people were the ones online. So, the marketing people in the anime industry would always tell people, dubs do better, they sell more. And everybody on the internet would say, bullshit, because what they would see on the internet was all the subtitle fans, but the internet was not something that like the everyday person used. It was people who are like more tech savvy, so they tend to be a bit more nerdy. They tend to like subtitles more. So, and they tend to know how to get access to a fan sub. So it was a really, really different. That I think that would be like the biggest kind of change or difference, but I don't see. I mean, I don't know. I think now it's different. You have these like big panels and huge events at Anime Expo, and it's the dub cast. You have people, so many people who are new actors who come from fandom who like just want to be an anime voice actor and nothing else. So it's a really, really different market. I think you have a lot of people, participating in open calls and things like that. I think that like my generation of people, like my generation, a group of people, we were all very much studying the craft, and we were doing plays, we were doing sketch comedy, we were very active in the acting community, and this was just one other thing that we found that we were good at, and it was another way to act,
Well, that last bit I definitely want to get back to a little later because I do want to talk about that for certain. Going back a little bit earlier, you were segueing a little bit into the kind of evolution of how far dubs have come at this point. It seemed like around that time, with people like Justin Cook and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn and folks like that, and even the late Kevin Seymour, God rest his soul, guys like that who were like, hey, you know what, like, this stuff is really cool. Why don't we really try to like push the envelope and like do a really good job so that this will be something that like, if this is the version that people see of this show or this movie or OVA or whatever, let's make it like a good representation of what the story is. Which I wanted to kind of go into Fooly Cooly because that was one of the first, I guess, not kids anime that I had ever seen. And I remember, I think I've told this story on other Kirblog's many times about when I first watched that. I was at a beach house in New Jersey on like a vacation, and my best friend and I stayed up every night throughout that week and watched 5 of the 6 whole episodes of it. And I remember when I saw it, and this was my first time hearing like you and Kari Walgren and a lot of folks like that.
Well, it was also Kari's anime debut, so
right.
she'd not done anything prior to that. So
was that your first anime too, or you did some other ones before that?
That was my second show ever.
Okay, well, sorry. Then going back a little bit, so how did you get your first job in VO specifically?
Oh, well, I produced that show, so that's how I got that job. I was working on producing English language versions because I came from the subtitle. I was more of a subtitled anime fan, and I didn't like the dubs. So I thought, oh well, shouldn't be too hard to make it different and make it better. So that's how I got the job as a producer, and then I auditioned for stuff that I was already producing, and that's how I got my start.
So that was the same. Where was Fooly Cooly and the other stuff you were doing at the time? What studio was that?
The company that I worked for was called Digital Manga, and the production branch was called Sync Point, and we only ever had 2 licenses. It was I'm Gonna Be an Angel, which is a 26 episode series, which we did not finish, and the license has now since expired. So I don't know. Nobody has a license.
Maybe they'll have a reunion and you can finish the show all these years later.
Well, it would be hard to locate a lot of those actors because they don't do this work anymore.
Okay.
And then the other license was Footy Cooly.
So I'm assuming, did you get involved from that, like maybe through like the anime club or like knowing people at the time that were like, hey, who does anime? Who works on this stuff? Like, how did that actually?
My friends from college were working for the company, and they were at the time. It was called Digital Manga because they were making CD-ROMs. Interactive CD-ROMs had audio of both Japanese and English and Spanish, and then they would take manga, they would digitize it, they would do light flash animation, they would do like light coloring on it, and you could use it as an educational thing. So you would like read manga, but you can swap out the audio and swap out the text.
Huh.
So you could read it in English and hear English, or you can read it in Japanese and hear English, or vice versa, or Spanish and Japanese, or English and Spanish, or whatever. And that's what they were working on at the time. And the president of the company was like, "Oh, well, we want to get into anime." And so my friends were like, "Hey, we're gonna start dubbing anime," and I had just graduated, and so then that's how I got involved with that company.
Mm-hmm. And so then Fooly Cooley, that was directed, I think. Was that Mark Handler, I think you did
Yeah.
that show? And I've not met Mark, but I've met Mary Claypool.
Well, he lives in China right now, so
Oh. Well, shout out to you, Mark, in China. I've not met him, but I have met Mary Claypool, who is an old school anime writer of many dubs. And she was talking about him and a lot of the early stuff that they were doing together. And yeah, it really did seem like a lot of people kind of in tandem with each other were all like kind of trying to up the ante with getting dubs to be good. It seemed like collectively around that same time with like the days of most of the companies that were around the U.S. and even some in Canada. They were like, yeah, let's take a little bit of a different approach to this. Like, it's not just about like Americanizing it as much as possible or whatever.
well,
like
there was also a lot of different philosophies. I think that you guys, this generation of fans, live in a situation where there's the internet, so you can like have a lot of different access and a lot of access to different sources of content, and it's not just the mainstream stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think before, people wouldn't really know about anime unless they went to look for it in a brick and mortar store, which
Right.
means you had to actually walk physically into a store and see it, and then feel like you want to come by. Sorry, I got a text and now I'm like distracted.
Where am I?
Yeah, I know. So that you feel that it's hard, right? You'd have to actually physically go to the store. You'd have to go through and look at the anime section and decide, that's what I want to buy. And that was the only way to do it. So it was a very different kind of market. And then the general population not necessarily knew about anime or know about anime tropes, because the world itself wasn't as international. So the best way to get things seen is for it to be on TV. And there wasn't Cartoon Network, really. There wasn't there were a few cable channels, but Cartoon Network hadn't really exploded. They hadn't, it was a big push to put anime on Cartoon Network and have that block. So most people, what they were trying to do was like, hey, we need to get this to the audience. The only way we can really get to the audience is get to be on TV. The executives, the people in charge at the TV stations, they're not really familiar with anime, so you send them the stuff and they think it's weird. So people try to make it more accessible to kids and more accessible to general population, not just the anime fan. So that's why you end up with shows that are very Americanized. I think there was two different approaches to it. One way is to not try to make it for the mainstream and only try to make it for the anime fan and stick more closely to the original. And that was kind of how, most of the stuff that you would buy on VHS and DVD were handled. And then there was the other approach that, hey, we're going to try to make it for the general public,
Right.
So there's different approaches. And then there were a few companies that really, it seemed like, and I can't really speak for them because I don't know what's in their brain, but it seemed like they were just out there to make a buck. And when you don't have a lot of choices and you don't have a big audience base, you can kind of get away with a lot more. So it seemed, at least to me at the time, that they were just doing whatever they wanted, whatever was cheapest and whatever they could get away with. I would also say that at the same time that we as producers didn't have as much access to the Japanese companies. You would get a license and if you didn't understand the show, you'd be like, okay, I don't understand it. Well, I'm just going to make it, I don't want it to be bad, so I'm going to just make it entertaining in this way.
Right.
And so a lot of that was being done, and partly is because they didn't have a direct communication to the Japanese side because everything was handled kind of with third parties and very separate. And I think from Japan's point of view, they didn't really care. It was like a foreign market that was just like they didn't really care, you know.
Yeah.
But then I think it seemed like it was becoming more popular in the United States and that they could, you know, make more money and then that people were paying attention to it. Then they wanted to be represented well. Then like the channels kind of opened up more and then you had more communication between.
Well, because especially like so a little bit after the Pokemon Dragon Ball Z twofold strike happened and suddenly anime was like known a lot more to the general public. A little bit after that, we got the advent of Cowboy Bebop and Trigun kind of back to back. And I think that the advantage that those two shows had is that because they were very like Western American influenced, I think there was a lot more openness and a lot less like, whoa, what is this weird like realistic looking cartoon thing or whatever. But Fully Cooley, I remember even when I first saw it, I was like, there is something very different about that show. Not just the fact that like it's a lot more like Japanese in terms of like its cultural stuff and et cetera, but also just like it's so bizarre, which you know, which I think is also exactly why it was so successful because there's really nothing else quite like that show.
Well, and that's really the original Japanese creators as well. Mm-hmm. You know, they made something really unique. But like going back to like talking about that, if you look at Dragon Ball Z, like Dragon Ball Z as we know it now that Funimation produces, right? That wasn't how it was originally on television. You know, it was a Canadian company, yep. And it was treated very Americanized for a Canadian company, but Westernized, I should say. And you look at like we're doing Sailor Moon now, but if you look at Sailor Moon and for all of its popularity, it was on television and it was very Westernized. Stuff was edited out, things were changed.
All the names were different. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like it did what it needed to do for its time, mm-hmm. And then once it became that popular, that's what made people know what anime is. That's what got people to seek out the stuff that was more obscure. Something like Furi Kuri, it was very, 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 I can't say the word for it. It's very strange. I feel like the creators made it for themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, they didn't care if they made something that they liked, that they understood, and it was up to the audience to figure it out. We weren't trying to make something to cater to the audience at all.
Actually, I am curious about something because I don't know. Okay, I've probably even like said this. Oh, I heard that this is whatever. If you know the answer, please confirm this to me. I had heard like ages ago, can't even remember where, that it was something like Gainax like had a lot of success, made a ton of money, and then they were like, hey, we have the budget to do like 6 episodes worth of whatever we want. Let's just come up with a bunch of like crazy shit and just have fun and make something like really out there and definitely for us, like as you were kind of describing. Like, is there some truth to that, or like do you know like kind of the came to be? I haven't heard
an official story about any of that.
Okay.
I just like Gainax has a reputation anyways of doing whatever they want.
Right.
But so I don't know officially, but that was what struck me working on the show, is that they were just creating something as creators are supposed to create, mm-hmm. to not necessarily to make money or to be popular, just create something that they love, that they're being creative, you know? Mm-hmm. And because it was something that like a lot of people loved and spoke to a lot of people. And I think it was actually a very complex piece, mm-hmm. And very confusing, if you're not paying attention, that when we got the license, we said we like it. The reason we like the show is for all of those things, because it's not Western. So we weren't at the time trying to get it on TV or anything. We just tried to be we just try to honor the original Japanese. Mm-hmm. So, that's why that show was handled the way it was handled. We all really loved the original source material, so we wanted to stick as closely to the original source material as possible. But
it was the first time I think I'd actually been introduced also to the honorifics, because I think that's one of the few dubs I've ever seen where you guys actually kept, you know, like Takun etc., like Haruko-san and all that. And I didn't even like process like, wait, what is that? I didn't even understand it fully until like way later when I started doing a little bit more of my own research, and I had an internet of which to do that on.
Yeah, the trend at that time was to not use honorifics, but like I came from a fan subbing background, and so did Shizuki, my other producer and translator. And I think that we came from a background where we didn't like seeing things westernized. So we wanted to make it more closer to the Japanese. And at the time, I was like, I think it came from a very philosophy of like, just because it's not American culture doesn't mean we have to make it American culture. Like if you're watching it, why can't we use it as a vehicle to teach audience members about other cultures?
I agree. Absolutely. I'm actually also very curious. I mean, very early details at the moment, but I'm curious about when that particular IP gets brought back soon. So that should certainly be interesting. But enough about Fooly Cooley. Let's go back to you, because this is about you. The reason I wanted to bring up that project specifically is because, like, from my experiences with you personally, like, I know you as a person who does a little bit of everything. You write, you produce, you direct, you engineer, you act, you do all of this. And it seems like you've been doing all that stuff, like, since the beginning of your career. How did you get involved with all of those things kind of, like, you know, in pieces together? Like, what made you who you are today?
Well, I think that it's because my first actual job was as a producer. So, because I mean, I don't know if your listeners know what a producer does, but a producer has to basically coordinate everything. And I worked for a small company. So, in addition to overseeing a lot of the work, I would do the work myself. So, I mean, there's a lot of things I don't do anymore, but I used to. Like, if you look at the original packaging for Footy Cootie and stuff, I approved DVD menu design. I have to approve the case, what kind of case we're using. I wrote all the text on the back, as well as edited and wrote text for that book, big, thick booklet that was in the original release. So, like, as a producer, you're kind of in charge of getting everything done. But as somebody who works at a small production company, you only have a certain number of staff members, and you only have a certain amount of budget for hiring outside people that are not on staff. So I'm on staff, so I did a lot of it. So that's really where that came from.
So having that grounding of like, okay, well, I have to do a little bit of everything to make sure it gets done at all is what allowed you to now, like, when you know, I mean, because like on Gundam Origin, I mean, you are doing like so much on that, you know, all collectively, and is that like all what kind of led to like why you can?
I think it's why I can, because I've done a lot of the stuff. The only thing that I didn't do at that time was directing, but I sat in a lot of directing sessions. I mean, yeah, I was a producer observing directors. I was also an actor. And then at the time even when I started directing, I don't think I really engineered that much, but from a product of like being around a lot of engineers and also having in this day and age to edit my own auditions and whatnot, I can now, I can pass as a recording engineer. I don't really call myself an engineer because I don't have the back knowledge about it. I don't know about signal chain. I can't mix. You know, there's things like that. So I can get by being a Pro Tools monkey.
Okay.
That's
Hey, well, I mean, works for me. Because we have fun when I think it's okay for us to say, because there's a little announcement recently. We just finished up recording Gundam Origin Part 4, Eve of Destiny, and I've gotten to do 3 of those now, and they're always a joy when we sit down with folks from Sunrise and just go through everything. And it's really cool because what I like about with you and Michael with MWavy Post in particular is you guys are meticulous in a way that is all about the final product, and like it like I never feel like, oh, this is too much or we're spending too much time on one take or whatever. Like it's always with a sense of like, no, we gotta make this as good as we can be. And actually going back to the earlier bit too, I think that's very much relatable. I think people would understand, because like for me actually, and for like independent like artists and animators and creators and stuff, that is exactly what you have to do. You have to be able to do a lot of everything yourself. If not, having some help. Like I was very fortunate, like on with my show with Tome, I had help from a lot of amazing people. But I did have to do a lot myself, and for a lot of other people, they do everything, every aspect of sound, animation, voices, writing, etc. And that's how they get by in general. So I think that there is, especially now, there's a lot to understand about. Like, yeah, well, this is how you do it, because otherwise, it's not going to get done. I would. My next one, actually, this is. I'm curious about this because you talked a little bit about this. On, I think it was the Adventures in Voice Acting documentary DVD. All one.
God, is that so old now?
Yeah, and all one of the three that were supposed to come out. Ha 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 ha. But you were talking about.
Was this supposed to be three? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be anime, games, and animation, and only the anime one came out. Whoops.
Well.
Oh well. But on that, you brought out your like schedule booklet, and you were talking about like.
That's one thing that I think about that I feel like, wow, that is so out of date because I don't use that thing at all anymore.
Well, in the spirit of that, though, I am curious. So, because you must be, I mean, even past just Gundam, but like you must be doing a billion things a week. I'm curious for my own sake, how do you manage doing all of these things like what is a week like for you practically?
It really varies. It really, really varies. I'm not always doing a million things a week. I think that one of the things that probably isn't taught in art school or in a conservatory that needs to be taught would be like time management.
Yeah.
And also just being organized, because I think that's one of the things, like having a sense of responsibility of being able to get things done and being able to organize and get to things when you can get to them. I had a really great mentor when I first started becoming freelance. She was actually the dub director on I'm Gonna Be an Angel. Mm-hmm. Her name is Fusako Shiotani, and she is an actress, and she was a trained seiyuu from Japan, and she was very, very, very supportive of me when I quit my job as a producer and decided to go freelance. And she would, say things like, Stephanie, your job is to do your laundry right now. Everything is your job, because when you get busy, and you will get busy, you won't have time to do it. So anytime you have free time, that's when you have to do all this other stuff, Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a different way of looking at your life. Also, I don't believe in sitting around and waiting for opportunities to come to you. You have to make your own opportunities, or you have to let people know that you are there and available. So a lot of the times when I was freelancing in the beginning, a lot of it was spent like writing cards, notes, and before email, and just organizing the things that I needed to organize. When I guess other people might just be like sitting at home being like, I don't have any auditions,
It's like, well, start. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Yeah, it's like be proactive.
Training, that's another thing. Like if you have free time and you have the funds, then get in classes, because there will be a time when you won't have time to take classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would actually say to anybody listening, especially because I know a lot of listeners to these are people either starting college or are about to go to college, etc. That is extremely important, and if there's no time like then when you're kind of on your own schedule to take responsibility for yourself and make those kind of opportunities for yourself and do whatever you can to prepare yourself for then when you have to get into adulting mode. Because it's true, like there are very few cases, especially in the creative world, where somebody is going to teach you that, unless you have a mentor, which even that is pretty rare, I would say. So yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with that. On the note of specifically the acting side of things, because this is something that I'm myself learning more about as the opportunities grow, which is great. But I'm slowly learning the side effects of when you're having to talk and scream and do things a lot over the entire course of a week. Maybe this seems kind of like weird to ask about, but how do you keep your voice in shape and yourself from stop yourself from wearing out, like keeping good care of your vocal cords, the instruments, as it were?
Yeah, so I think that like there are definitely tricks and various things that like voice actors have, sprays and cough drops and herbal stuff they can take that make them feel better with their voice if they're feeling under the weather. But the most important thing I think is just being generally healthy. So, don't, and they say the same thing for like actors too, just like actors who are on set and you work long hours. Sometimes you have night shoots. So you have to take care of yourself. You need to get your rest when you get your rest. And, you need to go to sleep. You need to go to bed early. You need to like not go crazy with the drinking and the smoking and the whatever and the partying. And you just have to be generally healthy.
Do you ever do like, I don't know if it's ever been that extreme, but do you ever do like ears, nose, and throat kind of stuff? Like, or is that pretty rare?
I mean, I have an ENT, so I go see my ENT whenever I have issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I just imagine like I've Yuri Lowenthal and Tara Platt, who we both know, of course. They talk about like just how many auditions and things a week they have to do, in just a 7-day span of time, and especially with like video games and like those kind of things can be very demanding, and they want you to scream your lungs out or whatever. I imagine it's even with as normal of and healthy of a lifestyle you can live, it's like there's only so much you can do before you're like out of it. So like if you've got like, I don't know if you've done like one of the Call of Duties or stuff like that before, but if you get those kind of things, like how do you kind of work around making sure you're not going to be like vocally killing yourself more or less?
Well, I think one just has to be very just very responsible. I don't know other than that. I mean, there are certain techniques and stuff. It's not something that I like go into in this context, but yeah, there are some things that you can do in terms of the way you scream to be good about it and about it. Okay, well, I have a lot of video game sessions, so I'm gonna go earlier. I'm not gonna talk for the rest of the day. You just have to be aware of it and be kind to your body.
I would agree. I actually, out of curiosity, have there been times if say something ahead of time is going to be like really like vocally stressful or something that like you wouldn't like if it's like a lot of hours and you wouldn't be able to commit to that, like have you turned down stuff before or is that a rarity too?
I've not really been in a position where I would turn down work, but I have, turned down an audition if it just seems like it's going to be like really vocally stressful, and it's not something that if it's if the pay is not great and it's going to be vocally stressful, I've kind of just been like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's especially when you get to a certain point where like you're okay financially, I think it's like acceptable to kind of get to that point. I guess I would say probably my last question, and going back to an earlier thing we were talking about. So you and Michael with MYAV, I would say, have been pretty cool about finding a lot of new talent. Because within the dubs that you guys work on in particular, I am always happy when I see such a great mix of like the old school veterans, the folks within your generation, and then like a lot of newer folks. And now I'm happy that I could do this with you because in my experience, you're blunt. You've been blunt with me, and I've taken away a lot from that, and that's helped me a lot over the years.
That's really blunt.
Yeah, but that's what I like. Like honestly, because the first thing that we did together was Bakuman, which was like 2011, and every time I ever had sessions with you guys, I always left like genuinely taking something away from it that was helpful for whatever the next job would be. And I think that's cool, and I think that's really important. And I think especially now, for better or worse, I would like to hope better, that there are so many more opportunities for people who are now interested in getting into this and are taking it seriously as a craft. And there have been like a huge amount of new people that have gotten into doing this and who are working consistently. This is probably the more generic question in terms of when you do cons or whatever, but what are maybe some things that you don't hear as often from people that are advice that you would give to folks who want to get into VO?
I would say that to recognize that it is a job and that it's not just like to treat it with the respect of any other career. Whether it be through training, professionalism, all of that stuff. I would also say that recognize that you always have the capacity to be better and get better, even if you're working a lot. Like, I think that one of the things that I encounter with newer actors, especially newer actors who have been working a ton, that there is a capacity for them not thinking that they can improve. So they're not listening to the direction. They're not opening. They're not like expanding their imagination to. So in essence, they're really doing themselves a disservice because they'll limit themselves in terms of their ability. I would also say that in terms of acting, if you're coming up now, you're in a place and in a generation where you have the internet and there's so much research that you can do on your own. So do that research. I know that when I was starting, I read every single book about voice acting and acting that I could get my hands on. And I took a lot of classes, I did as much as I could on my own, which at that time, I didn't have access to the information that people have now. So if you somehow manage to get in a place where you can ask somebody who you admire, who's in the business, and you have a few moments of their time and you want to ask them questions or advice about the industry or about your work and stuff, you would be in a place to use it wisely because you've done all of the research. So you're not going to ask a question that like they could tell you the answer to that you could have just found it on the internet. And if that's the case, you're wasting that person's time and you're wasting an opportunity for yourself, really. So I think that people have to keep in mind that it's not just about fun and games. It's an awesome job. It is fun, but like it is something that that the people who have been successful about it not only have been really serious about the acting side of it and training and being better as actors, but they also know that it's a business, that they're running their own small business.
Yeah, and actually, I think something really worth noting, because I don't often think about this, but this is important to bring up, is that because you were talking earlier about you were an anime fan, and it is perfectly cool to be invested into the stuff that you're working on. If anything, in some cases, that can further educate your instincts to the medium. And certainly it's the people behind it are can be appreciative of that. But I think that there's an important difference between like being enthused and being into what it is that you do and being a fan in a professional setting, which you don't want to go overboard with, because then that can make you look like an idiot. Because I mean, and God knows, like, it's no stranger, I certainly love cartoons and anime and video games, etc. But because of the things that I learned early on from you and a lot of the folks that gave me a lot of my first shots, now I feel that I'm able to carry myself in a way that is professional. And not to get too ranty, but it bums me out because I see a lot of people who have like really good potential, and they hold themselves back because of things like, they're thinking too much with the mindset of I'm a fan and not I'm a professional and I'm taking this serious. I'm taking this as it's a job, like any other job. And it's a shame because of the fact that there are so many resources and there's so many good classes, and not all, but many of them are legit and can seriously do a lot for you. And I don't know. I feel like not everybody makes as much use of that as they could and should. But because I don't know, I love seeing new faces and hearing like new interesting folks, that can lend something fresh to, as more and more shows tend to come out. And like I said, I feel like MYV has been like kind of a good herald of that, if anything. So I don't know, but yeah.
One of the things to think about that if you are a fan and you're working in this industry or you want to work in this industry, to kind of just basically like check yourself is that like if you're in session and you're at a job and you're working, it's cool to be a fan. It's cool to love what you do. Because if you love what you do, you're going to do your best to do a good job. And it's all about making the show better and the best it can be. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're all excited because it's more about you being in the show and you getting to be in the show, then that's a place of ego, and that doesn't help anybody. Because now you're not focused on the project. You're not focused about making the show better. You're just focused about you being in the show. Mm-hmm. And that type of excitement is not helpful to anybody. That's what makes you nervous. That's what makes you put your foot in your mouth. That's all about ego, and that's going to lead you down the wrong path. And we're all really ultimate there. If you truly, truly love the genre, you truly, truly love the work, then your end goal should be making an awesome product.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think I've said that before, but I fully am in agreement about the fact that I think that it is supposed to be about the final product, and it's really easy because performing is a very like me, it's my time kind of thing. I think it's easy to get yourself into that ego headspace, but it is supposed to be about like actors are cogs in the machine, just like animators are and writers and etc. They're all very important pieces of it, but it's not all about like this is the me show and this is about my opportunity or whatever. And I think that, but I feel with acting in particular, that's one where it's really easy to get into that headspace. And you don't want to be down on yourself either. Like it's sure it's good to be proud of yourself, but if you're making it all about yourself, then yeah, I think it's a disservice to the bigger picture, if anything. But that was all, I think, very helpful. So I think that's gonna wrap us up. Do you have any other last things you want to say, or I don't know, anything you want to plug or anything like that?
I think we had a very intense, well, not intense, but a very we talked about some deep stuff there.
It was intense, man. Anything you want to plug? You got? Oh, I feel like such a dipshit for not realizing. Oh yeah, also Sailor Moon. A massively iconic character. No big deal. That's continuing onward, I know. Gundam Origin Part 4 is coming out within the year.
Plus, I don't know when this is airing.
Oh, this will be out like within the next month or so.
You know what? People could just go to my Twitter, which is @StephanieSheh, and to basically get updates about my dog and what.
he put it as the good dog. Well, okay, I think that's gonna wrap it. So, Stephanie, thank you. This was awesome. And in the comments below, everybody, if you have any other thoughts, stories, opinions to share about anything regarding the LA dubbed anime world, anything that Stephanie in particular has worked on in any of her various capacities, maybe any other questions that I can maybe pop by and answer in the comments, anything you all, leave your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. And I don't know, again, who the next guest will be, because I don't know what orders they will be. Maybe this is the final one, in which case, hey, I hope you enjoyed Voice October. Who knows? But either way, I hope you'll be enjoying these. I've got plenty more in the works. And that's it for me. That's it for Stephanie. And we will catch you all in the booth. Bye.
Bye-bye.